Okay, well, welcome everybody to our September meeting. Yeah, we did all the introductions beforehand, so I'll just roll it over to John. You're the first on the items today, so yeah.
Okay.
You want me to spell it out, John, or?
No, I've got the agenda in front of me, so this is good. So I can remember what I wanted to put on it. So this is a quick one. You'll either know the answer or you don't know the answer. And if I tell you, I'm going to tell you this sort of scenario, and if I'm getting it wrong, please correct me because I am a little bit confused on it. But for one of our clients, they have quarries and they collect quarry material from their quarries for use in their road works, and they keep what they call daily haul job sheets, and they record on those job sheets the quantities of material that they're taking from the quarries. Is this sounding familiar to anyone at the moment? No. Okay. Do any of your councils run quarries? Have a quarry?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so we get these. I know where these sheets go in the EDRMS and what disposal authority we put on them, and we classify them by the sales permit. So they have to have a permit to sell quarry materials, even if it's for their own use. And you've got to keep them for whatever the retention period is till after the sales permit's expired. So we put them under the sales permit, and that's been working really well. One of the things they do extract is water as well, and we had been, because they come on these daily job haul sheets or daily haul job sheets, we've been putting them with all the other quarry material. So which kind of made sense. That was fine. And what happened was we asked them, we got these sheets, but they didn't have a sales permit on them. And the water ones don't come through very often. That's kind of really rare to see them. And we said to them, what's the sales permit? And they came back and said, we do not need a permit for water for road construction purposes. So I went, okay. So I went and looked it up. So from what I can understand, sometime in 2016, the state government said, let's make this a lot simpler for all your water licensing, because you do need water licenses, to take water out of dams and rivers and things like that. But they said, let's make it simpler. And one of the things is, if you're using water for certain purposes, and road construction is one of them, and you're a construction authority, which councils are, you don't have to have a water permit. So up to 2016, I had a look in the EDRMS, and we had put them on the water permit, these sheets that record how much water they're taking. And they have to record that because the state government still requires at any time that council may have to put a report into them on their water usage. So even though they don't need a permit now, so we used to put it under the water license, but now they don't have a water license. So I've continued to put it under that R&D. I've got it classified in a different spot. I'm using the water permits license, but I just wanted to know what other people were doing. And I get from the silence here that no one else has come across this at all. No takers on that one? Okay, if anyone's listening to this.
We have something that's not like it. So we've got extractive industries, which is for the quarry people that they have to have, which is through, I think it's the DEP, Department of Environment and Protection.
Yeah.
And then some of them also have to have a water license for extracting out of our rivers for when they do. It is, some of it is roadworks and some of it is something to do with dumping, I think. It's got something to do with dumping. And they have ERA licenses.
Yeah. And we've got all that sorted. So we've got all our ERA licenses. But yeah, this is something that's changed because this council I'm working with does not need a water license for anything else. So they don't have a water permit because they're only taking it for construction purposes. So Yeah, it's a bit of an odd one. So if anyone's listening to this recording and you've got the answer for me, or you can let me know what you do with it. Yeah, appreciate you contacting me. So, but anyway, we'll move on unless someone wants to discuss it further. So Tina, you got your hand up.
Just wanted to ask a quick question, just to not be ignorant on that what you were just saying.
Yep.
Coulda, shoulda, woulda actually be going to asking someone at the depot, do we actually have some, should I be knowing this information somewhere from a records perspective? Should I actually be asking them?
I think you should. It's a really interesting topic because this council, when I first came across them, they had a box of these green sheets, daily haul job sheets. And this is going back quite a few years. And I said, so these are records. What do you do with them? And they said, oh, we just destroy them. And I said, why are you destroying them? You can't do that. You can destroy them, but we need to put it through a compliant process. So you're compliant with legislation. And they said, oh, no, these are disgusting. So these guys go in the trucks. They wipe up their lunch, wipe their faces and clean their hands on them. And she said, and John, when they have to go to the toilet, they do worse things with them. She said, so we're not keeping them. We'll keep them for a very short period of time, but they stink and it's unhygienic. And so her argument was, for workplace health and safety reasons, we're going to break the legislation, this act, so that we don't break the legislation in the Workplace Health and Safety Act. So, and I went, oh my goodness. Okay, so let's try and do something. So I know this council still has ones that we don't collect, but then there are some that we are collecting. So I don't know what's happening in the background, how that decision goes, but yeah. It's a wild
so is
story.
it something that has to be kept as a hard copy? Could it not be an electronic document in the first instance to avoid toilet paper?
Yes, because these people are out in trucks in the middle of the bush. That's why there's no toilet there. And they don't have any access to any satellite internet or anything out there. So it's all handwritten. Yep. So, and I've said to them, we
so
can
you
put
hand
through.
Hand them the job sheet and a
Yep.
roll of toilet paper,
Yeah.
and just please pick the correct one, and please bring back the
these
job sheet at
people
the end of the day.
Full grown. Surely they can, work that out for themselves.
Oh,
Hey,
not
I'll bring my
toddlers.
lunch. I'll bring my thermos, and hey, I might bring a roll of toilet paper today.
Is that classed as PPE?
Yeah.
Claim your toilet roll back.
I said them, we can destroy these very, very quickly. We do an early source record destruction process. I said we can keep them for just a couple of weeks. We'll put through a process where we make sure that the QA has been done and they're all right, and we can get rid of them very quickly. But we need to put through a compliant process, and we'll do that later, sort of thing. So, but yeah. So yeah, that's the side story. So you should go down to the depot and you should ask, because if they do road construction, they're getting gravel, for example, from somewhere. They should be collecting the tonnage of gravel that they're collecting and transporting, and that's supposed to be reported against the sales permit. So regularly they're supposed to put in reports to Department of Natural Resources on how much gravel and sand and other things that they're taking.
Yep, right. Okay, no, good to know. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Will I move on to the next item, Holly, on the agenda?
Yeah, if you like, John. Yep.
Okay, so we're in the last couple of meetings that we have had some discussions about Office 365 and the idea of moving away from an EDRMS like Magic Documents and using Office 365 and Microsoft. And I know a lot of record departments getting pressure from their councils to consider doing this. And I'm not really knowledgeable in Office 365, but I hear a lot about it, and it's not compliant with record keeping standards and legislation in Australia. So it's funny, I was on the National Archives Australia website today having a look at their governance framework, and they do mention Office 365, but they're saying that Office 365, we will have governance around this as our collaboration tool, but they're not saying as that record keeping system. So, so one of the things I had pointed out is that, I mean, they do have in SharePoint, there is a records management module. And if you pay a big enough license, you get access to that. But this isn't really, that module's not really what people are talking about. They've got this concept of record keeping in place. And Office 365 uses what they call labels. So they put a label on records, and that label is how they classify things. So that's, I think it gets very complicated how it happens. Have I got someone waiting to get in? Oh, here's Aaron. Aaron will be interested in this. Hey, Aaron, how are you?
Good, mate. How's yourself?
Good, good. Just getting on the Office 365 topic. So you've come just at the right time.
Pain point. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So, you know, I don't understand how it works, but I do know these labels get applied, and they have retention authorities, disposal authorities and retention periods on it. They have access security and different things. I've heard they're very hard to apply. It's not really intuitive. And the real point was that you need a third-party product to really make Office 365 work for you as your record keeping system. And I know the big driver for executive management is record keeping in place. Everyone likes this. They're selling this record keeping by stealth. You know, no one has to record keep anymore. Office 365 will do this record keeping for you. So going along those lines, I went down to RIMPA Live in Canberra in May, and I tried to get around. There were 3 organisations I wanted to talk to, and it was Castle Point, Record Point, and AvPoint. And like I said, if they've got Point in their name, they probably do something with SharePoint. So I got to talk to Castle Point and AvPoint down there, and then at the Queensland Conference we had at QSA last month, I got to talk to Chris from Record Point. So, and I said when I did that, I'd come back and sort of share what I'd gathered. So, I mean, again, these were very short discussions, and it's just trying to get a concept of what their systems do. But from my point of view, it's not record keeping what they do. So they all do, I think, the same thing as each other, but they might describe it a bit differently and describe the capabilities a bit differently. So I don't want to sort of, you know, what they do, I think they do well. It's just not how I would record keep. And the one that I liked the best, I think, was Castle Point. Not that Castle Point does anything dramatically different, but when I spoke to staff in Castle Point, I said, so is it an EDRMS? They came straight out and said, no, this is not an EDRMS. And the 2 other organisations do describe their offerings as an EDRMS, but when after talking to them, I think they're really all doing what Castle Point does. So I just going to give you a quick overview just so that you sort of can get some idea of my concept of what they're doing. Castle Point, is it Sharon or Karen? Oh, can't remember. From Castle Point, she said they call it Castle Point. You've got to imagine that you've got a castle in the middle, and you've got your world out all around the castle, and the castle stands up high, and you've got a few record keepers in the castle that are keeping an eye on the environment. So all the workers are down there with all their information and their records, and then they're up in the castle looking at things, and they run Castle Point over the whole system, so it looks in your EDRMS, and it looks in your email, and it looks in your shared drives, and wherever you point it, if it's sort of Office 365 related, they can have a look at it, and they run some artificial intelligence over it. And they're all doing the same thing, and they say that the way she's described it, where I see the value of their product is they will say these are high risk records. You know, we've run this through our AI, and the AI's come back and said, you know, Aaron's got a whole bunch of really high risk confidential records in his on a shared network drive. So then records will come along and say, Aaron, what are you doing? You've got these records here. This is corporate. These are corporate records. We need to get them in the EDRMS where we can protect them. So I wonder, that sounds like a great idea. They'll also do it with, you know, everyone's email. So if you're just leaving things in your email, Castle Point will come and say, hey, we've found these high risk records over here. Someone should come and do something with them. So the records people should go and do something with them. Now the records are left where they are, but like an entry is put into their Castle Point system with all the information about that record. So we know it's a high risk. We know that this is perhaps the classification and the disposal authority, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The other two organisations don't really describe it like that. They describe it as record keeping in place, that they run their system over it. And all the records are managed as records, but where they are. Now, it's not how I'd manage records, because I asked some follow-up questions, and the answers were fairly much the same. I said, so if I have something in my email that's a record, you're going to come and flag it as a record and put a retention authority on it, disposal authority, et cetera, et cetera. And they said, yeah, that's right. I said, so I've kept it in my email because I don't really want anyone to see it. So do I even know that you've done that? No. So I don't even know that my information that I thought I was keeping private is no longer private. I said, so I'm going to delete it now because, you know, I'm going to do the wrong thing and delete it. And they said, no, even if you delete it, it's still in the system. We still have it. So I don't have it anymore, but the system has it. It's in the background somewhere, and their software knows where it is. I said, okay, so okay, now I want to do a search because record keeping is about making our records accessible to everyone who should have access to them. So I want to do a search on a topic. Can I search everyone's mailboxes now for this information? Which is quite concerning to me because I don't really think I should be able to see anything in the CEO's mailbox, for example. And they said, yeah. So they said, well, yes and no. So maybe not you, but the 2 or 3 people we have in records can. So the records people can see everything. But for me as an individual, so if I now really want to do a search to see what information our organisation has on a certain topic, I really have to go to records and say, can you use your superpowers to search the whole area and give me access to the information that I need to do my job? So one organisation said that's the way it would work. The other organisation said, no, you can open it up to everyone, but you could tell the way they were sort of saying, yeah, you can give access to everyone, but it's, you know, you sort of got a feeling reading between the lines that might be a nightmare if you tried to do it. The other thing that came out about it was that they might claim they have some AI that can determine whether something is a record or not. But personally, I think that that's a human task. People know if something's a record, and if it's not a record, we don't need to keep it. But they're starting to push this thing of records and data. Now, we have no legislation around keeping records, about managing data as records, unless that data is a record. But because they can't determine what's a record and what's not, they're going to manage everything. So, and this is where they've got this big problem. They're saying, oh, we've got so much data now, how do we manage it? And I'm going, well, it's because you're trying to manage it. If we just got our people to do that one simple task and say, is this a record or not? Surely we can train all our staff to be able to do one thing. Is this a record or not? If it's a record, we'll take care of it. If it's not a record, get rid of it. You know, it's as simple as that. But they're keeping everything because they can't tell what's a record or not. And they know that's not really best practice record keeping. So they're trying to, you can tell they're using words and terminology to say, oh no, the courts want you to keep data if it's a record. You know, well, we already know that. So we know that we have to keep records, but we don't actually have to keep rubbish. And but their systems actually, I don't think can, because they're saying we'll record keep in place. They're just treating everything as a record. So I think there can be good tools. I think the way Castle Point described what their tool does, I think particularly if you're a large organization, that could be an amazing tool to have this governance software looking over everything that's out there and highlighting risk to the records department to say this person over here is keeping risk, extensive, confidential, important records outside of a record keeping system. But to say that those three products are a compliant record keeping system, I think they'll be struggling to really be able to justify that. So just thought I'd give my feedback on that. I hope I haven't upset any of these companies because they've got great software and very smart people working for them. But that was just the, you know, when I thought about how I record keep, I went, no, I don't think that would work for me. So has anyone got any questions for me on that?
I've got a comment.
Sure, go.
It sounds like way extra work. Seriously? Like we already train our users to profile their emails. Anything that's physical should be coming to records to profile and so forth. Yeah, I think that's just user training at the end of the day, but it's good that there's a tool that can identify what is a record, but for me, it just sounds like so much more work. It's just scary. And yeah, no, it's not an EDRMS at all.
It's not that you're absolutely right. You know, the way we record keep in Corp Mem, we like to do it by big buckets. So we say, you know, employee history files are employee history files. We know what goes on an employee history file. We know how long we have to keep it, what the access to it is. We don't have to think of every individual record. We just think of this is how we treat the information that's on an employee history file. For them, an employee history file information records could be scattered amongst multiple systems, multiple storage areas, and grouped and with other things. So you can't all of a sudden treat records as an accumulation of a group. You've got to treat everyone individually. And I agree, Krista, that's a lot more work, in my opinion, a lot more work.
I've got a comment on that. In that, I would be excited for like AvePoint, SharePoint sort of EDRMS system, if you want to call it that or not. So I wouldn't be our users at the moment. If it's a record, they upload it into Magic, and that's great. But Magic's got a high bar to get over that compared to SharePoint, where you can just drag it and drop it in a folder and then it's done, sort of thing. So we actually have pretty low uptake on people actually doing that.
Info expert.
That
Magic,
records keeping, because they have to open up a program, they have to bring it across, like they have to put the metadata in themselves. It's just we lose a lot of records, or lose track of a lot of records, because you can't do. Users aren't actually doing that. So I like the idea that it's opening it up and making easier accessibility for users to do the record keeping. So if I was going to implement that, like an AvePoint, SharePoint sort of thing, I would still keep like the Magic record structure. So you have just one library and it has all your folders, your big buckets and stuff, and have users use that. But you've also got that safety net of if there's a user that isn't doing the right thing, or it stops people from deleting the wrong email or the wrong record and stuff like that. As for searching and that sort of thing, if you're using Microsoft 365, it's already got that functionality in it. So you can give certain people within the organization rights where they can just go in, and it's really good for RTI requests, for example. So they log in, they type in whatever topic it is, and it will search every user's OneDrive, personal emails, everything that's connected in there, Teams chats, messages, your private messages in Teams, and it brings it all into one file. And then from there, you can search through. So AvePoint and like Castle Point, while they probably piggyback on that functionality, but that functionality is already there anyway. So people have that access to everyone's emails, private emails and stuff anyway. And I'm pretty sure you can do that through Exchange server as well. You can search as an RTI request into everyone. You can't see their whole email inbox, but if you choose a topic, it will search all the users' inboxes. So that functionality is already there. But yeah, that's why I'm excited. I don't see it as a great replacement and just leaving everything as it is and just having anarchy. But I think it's a really good safeguard, and it's a lower bar for user access to just have a folder system, just like a local folder system that you can just drag files into, and then you never really have to think about that again as a user. And
yeah,
I think
I
you've
like.
still got to use those your record management sort of to manage it, and you still have to make sure that everything in those buckets, in those folders, is a record, etc. But yeah, that's how I think. That's why I think it could be a good thing moving forward in a 365 environment.
Use the word access, but I feel that you're talking about access to a tool, not access to the information. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Access to the tool. So instead of drag and dropping, people have to open up a whole program. It's the bar's too high for global uptake sort of thing.
Yeah. I find that
access to the information, if it's just a local drive, just the same as your Windows C drive, you can just do a search and find the information anyway, which is sort of easier than Magic Search as well, to be honest.
Yeah,
in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I know I'm used to the Magic Search, and I mean, I can do a search in like Windows, but I don't know how complex those searches go, and how much metadata I can actually use to search on. One of there's just a couple of things there. It concerns me that if we're not managing access, because yes, we do need to give everyone access to the information they need, but we also need to be able to restrict access. So just to have a folder structure on a network drive and say that's where everyone can get to it is really a little bit concerning, because we do need to restrict access to some information.
That's if you think of Magic, you got for us, we have different libraries. So like the HR library versus engineering versus our regular subject files, and each library might just be a different SharePoint site or team in there, but and then you can give and take access from there. But you're right, you definitely can't just put everything into a network drive and just hope that everything's going to be fine.
Yeah. And I know what you're saying with this concept of different libraries, because I go on a lot of sites and I've got a HR library, they've got the property library, and only certain people get access to those libraries. But then we start to find information getting siloed. So the pendulum swings too far the other way. Now HR says if it's personnel related, it goes to the HR library, and only HR getting access to that. And there's actually information in there that other people should be able to have access to, even if there's their policies, for example, and that sort of thing. I know you might say they're on the intranet, but there is a lot of information in a personnel file structure that is useful to other people to have access to. And that's where we don't look at libraries in Info Router as our method of providing access or restricting it. We put in a security model over the top, and we do it by security groups. And we say people who have this job role go into that. I don't care who you work for, what your job title is. If you do this role, you go into that group, and this group gets access to all this information because that's what they're. And then it becomes a corporate decision too. It's not HR saying who controls the information. It's not engineering saying who controls theirs. So the other thing I was going to say too, just on the AI that they're using to decide if something's a record or not, it's all rules based. So they say, oh, if it has the word governance in it, it's probably got to do with governance. But I'll tell you, there's a lot of governance is a word that we've used several times in this conversation. It's not an important record. We'll keep this meeting for a while, but it's not an important record. We don't have to keep it forever. It's not actually a governance record. And that rules-based AI that they're using is very tedious to maintain and is very fragile, because as soon as we start using a different word to governance, all of a sudden all those rules around governance don't work. And there was one thing I wanted to say it'll come back to me. It'll come back to me. Move on if someone else has something to say.
I've got a couple of comments, please.
Yeah.
So we've been using Office 365, Teams, Exchange, Azure and all that quite a fair bit, quite heavily. And admittedly, Aaron, as you say, that Exchange and Office 365, you can do a search and you can see what the result is and all the rest of it. It's lacking as a records management system purely because you don't see the logs of who's been able to have who has looked at it. You lose all that functionality in there, whereas Info Expert does absolutely do that. You can be that big brother, which I know that's an awful term, but sometimes you do have to do that. So once a user knows that that's open slather, you'd be surprised how much they go for it. And it's not ideal, it's not an EDRMS, whereas Info Expert just has that higher level. And when you were saying about dropping and dragging, do you not have the connector panels with Outlook or Word or Excel where, well, Outlook is the drop and drag? And I understand what you're saying, because DataWorks, our previous Douglas Shire Council, we use DataWorks, and you used to do that for anything. You could just drop and drag, it would open it up and off you go.
Yeah, so we do have like the Outlook connectors, but you're still required to choose a folder manually, and then you have to go through and put the metadata in, and it can, it's more tedious than just grabbing an email and dragging it into a folder, for example.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it's not asking too much for someone to learn how to actually log into Info or into Magic Documents. It's not too high a training bar to get them over. And you can drag and drop, and you can drag and drop multiple records into InfoRoute as well, which I'm sure you're aware of. But I did remember what I was going to pick up on, and Krista reminded me, and thanks to that, Krista, I did not even know that you didn't have those read logs and things in Office 365. So that's really an interesting piece of information.
Yes. I just remembered, because we use 365 for our council meeting agendas. And I wanted to make sure that the users have read those things. So there is a policy in there that you can put on where it has who's actually viewed that. I think you can go as far as when and what time, and if they've viewed it multiple times. I haven't looked so hard, but there is a policy to make sure that someone's read something, or that's what we're using it for, or to see if they have.
Yeah.
Is there a tool that you're using to access Office 365 for the agendas? Because we have the same.
No, it's just basically a SharePoint site, and in the SharePoint library properties, I had to Google it to figure it out. But yeah, it's definitely there.
Yeah, it's SharePoint that's applying that functionality, not Office 365 though. So if you weren't, which I guess you are using SharePoint in one way, but in not the full functionality if you're going directly to Office 365. There is a connection, but it's not quite integrated as such, because we use it because we have DocAssembler for our minutes and agendas. And as a system administrator, I see the back end of Office 365 and get involved in all that sort of stuff. So it does lose that higher end functionality of access, and when you want to do those logs and stuff like that. And you can apply a level of accessibility, as in who has the rights to do what to it. It means they can go and delete it.
Yeah, it's not as fine, I think, as Magic.
No.
Yeah, but it's weaknesses and strong points in there as well.
Yeah, and Krista reminded me of the thing I forgot to talk about. Well, I was going to pick up on, and that is metadata. And you know, most of our documents these days are text searchable, so there's really not much in that document that our search, for example, can't find. So metadata is really important when you're thinking about, as human beings, we can add information to our records that a computer is not aware of and can't do. And I know there's a lot of systems out there that say we put automatic metadata, you know, we'll pull it out, put the metadata on. If it's already in the document, you're actually not adding any value to me. The metadata I want is from your engineers and from your HR people who are actually putting something in the description to give this record some context, because that's where we get the context from. It's from human beings. And I don't think computers and AI actually are at that point where they can sort of think outside the square and know background on things to add that metadata in. So the first thing we need to do is get people to recognize what's a record and what's not. The second thing is, if it's a record, give us some information so we know what to do with it. So 2 things to ask our staff. It's not getting too hard. I know we're running out of time. I know that Holly's got to leave a few minutes early. Do we want to continue on this subject, or will we move on because we've got to leave Krista some time?
I've just got a little bit just to add to it. Look, new to the role, I wouldn't say OCD, but I'm work smarter, not harder, place for everything, you know, everything in its place. And I think I've found a lot easier making sure you've got a proactive approach to training, being available to the teams. They know that they're not so much they're being checked up on, but that you know what they're doing. You go to them and say, "How are you going this project? I've got boxes. I've got, you know, archiving coming up. Please make sure you've got your emails for this event or project saved here. If you need any help, they know. Oh, whoops. Okay, I better do it. But not so much keeping an eye on them, but they know that you're there. You can help and support them, and getting that done and keeping the procedure simple. And starting from that training. If you get audited, if you don't have this in here, if you can't find it properly because it's not named properly, how much trouble could you possibly be in, or how much trouble could council be in because it's not there, and honing that into them in their initial inductions when I'm getting them. But being there for support, having a simple procedure, I'm finding that the uptake for the amount of people who are now getting things in Magic the right way are now seeing the benefits. They're using the search function. They know how to use the folders. They can find whatever they want, which is now reducing me in my workload for having to search for stuff. They trust the system. And I'm only one person. I don't have a records team. I'm only me. So I figure I nut it out at the start, and I don't have problems at the end.
It's actually brilliant. And that's going to lead me into the next thing if we move on to it. Are we ready to move on? Does someone else want to talk about this stuff a little bit more? Because, I mean, I can stay on. If Holly, if you have to go and people are still interested to talk on, I can keep this open. We just won't have our chair. So, but
the
so
ladies are here anyway, John. If I'm stuck off, and the other ladies are here anyway. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I'm happy to keep talking about. I don't want to cut anyone off if anyone else wants to. We're all good. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the RIMPA Queensland Branch Conference on the 2nd to 4th of November. So a couple of things here. I'll try and get through it quickly. The first thing is, I don't know if you've seen correspondence come through from RIMPA, if any of you get correspondence from RIMPA. So RIMPA is our professional association. It used to, until about a week ago, stand for Records Information Management Professionals Australasia. And it had a what do you call it? Constitution based on states and areas, so including New Zealand. So that's all changed. They had a vote last week. They're now called Records and Information Management Practitioners Alliance Global. So they've added global to the end. They use the same acronym, so I suppose it saves them a lot of money changing things. I like being called a professional because I find we're constantly having to justify our roles in organisations, and lawyers and accountants and even IT people all have their professional associations and say, look at us. This was ours, and now it's a practitioners association. So I'm not too happy on it, but nevertheless, I think that it'll make it more welcoming to people who didn't feel they were professionals, only felt they were like practitioners. So that was a change in the name. They've changed the constitution because Queensland, I think it's for something like the last 12 years, has won best state in Australia, best branch in Australia. The Queensland branch is just an awesome bunch of people who do a lot of volunteer work for our profession and do amazing stuff. But every other state and New Zealand did not have very active branches, and there was a lot of you know, for the people who were volunteering, because there wasn't a lot of people volunteering, there's a lot of work for them to do. It was very disheartening, and they just couldn't compete with what Queensland was doing. So what they've actually done is they said, we're not going to have different areas anymore. We're just going to be one RIMPA, and it's a global organisation. So they'll still be doing similar things, but there won't be, this is Queensland, this is New South Wales, this is Western Australia. It'll be just, this is what RIMPA's doing in Brisbane or what RIMPA's doing in Adelaide. So that's a change. I just thought I'd let you all know there. Always encourage you, if you're enjoying this line of work, you should join RIMPA. It is your professional association. There's a lot of resources and help from RIMPA. It's not very expensive membership anyway, and you do get a lot out of it. I've been the vice president on the chapter for the last 4 years, and they've normally ends at the end of the financial year, but because there's change, they asked us to stay on for another 6 months. So I'll be vice president of Queensland chapter till the end of December, and then there'll be no Queensland ever again. So they're changing the way that'll work and how people can get involved. So Queensland's putting on their conference on the 2nd to the 4th of November. It's in Hervey Bay. So Tina, what I was going to say, I thought it was a good segue from what you were saying. I loved what you were saying. They've asked me to ask this group if anyone would be interested in presenting something. So I'm not putting pressure on anyone to present. I know records people are quite often, we're the backroom workers. We like to be, a little bit anonymous. But if anyone would like to present, they would love to have a case study or something done. So, or if you know of anyone who would be a presenter for our conference, let us know. You can let me know and I'll pass that on. So that they usually have one like in Brisbane, and then they have one in the country. So they're calling Hervey Bay the regional one this time. I guess it's only a few hours from where they are. And it is, I know travel's always hard, but if you can get down, it would be great. And what I thought we could do, I'm just going to put it out there. If anyone gets back to me or gets back to Gympie on this topic, I thought, because we have got together a couple of times and had our own forum. Aaron's been there. No, now I think only you and I have been to them. They're good, aren't they, Aaron? We've had fun when we get together.
It was fantastic, really good. I learned a lot of stuff and good meeting people.
It was really good, and I think that when we ran them, we try to put on a few speakers and things, but the most part that everyone enjoys is where we just sit around and in a group and discuss things, and people just really love it. You could have no program and this group would get together and fill a whole day up just chatting, and it's really good stuff. So if we're interested, if a few of you would like to come along, we could piggyback off this conference, and there'd be no charge because we'd get a room. So I'm sort of thinking we do something on the first day. They have something in the afternoon, and I thought we could do something in the morning and over lunch. And I'd be happy to, as Corp Mem, to provide, sandwiches and whatever for lunch. They said they'd provide a meeting room or something for us at the place. So if you think that'd be a good thing, it's been quite a few years since we've got together. So talk to other people that you know, and let me know, and I'll try and get something rolling and organised so we can have our little, in-person get together and then go to this amazing conference that Queensland always puts on, and it'll be the last Queensland, so it's a historical one too. And Hervey Bay is a great place to go and visit as well. So It's where are we staying? It's in, oh, no, I won't say. It's either, wait, is it the Oaks? I'm not sure. I'll have to have a look. But it's in one of the nice hotels there. So, and just to finish up, the last thing on that is in the past, they have sponsored someone to come to the conference. And they've sponsored someone from our group once before. They did Sinead from Berkshire Council. She was a real hit. That was actually down at Clownda where I used to live. And she's an Aboriginal woman. She was, I think, 21 at the time. And she was a hit. She got up and just spoke about her life up in Burketown and her experience with records management. And she's very new. It was terrifying for her. She's a very shy person, but she did a great job. So not that you have to speak. If you do get sponsored, you do not have to speak, and I can go and they encourage you to, but I can go and stand up for you and say no. But if you know someone who can really benefit from a sponsor, I think it's like they give you your accommodation and $500 towards travel. So if you know someone or you're interested yourself, let me know, and I will put your name forward to the committee and say, hey, you know, I put this out there, and so from somewhere would be really interested in coming along. And I'm sure if you do a presentation, you'd almost be a shoo-in. So just have a think about that as well. And that's really, unless anyone's got a question about the conference in November or us getting together, that's all I've got to say on that.
Awesome. Okay. Next on the agenda is Krista regarding MS Teams retention.
Yeah, so like I was saying earlier, I do deal a lot with our IT people in regards to the back end of Teams and the setups and just a whole lot of works within Office 365. But there's a configuration that's going to be changing in Office 365 very soon regarding retention and disposal. And I had a question from them about how long do we keep chats for? So I thought, okay, that's going to be an R&D question. I'll go to the regular R&D schedule, and that didn't sort of give me much hope at all, because it's basically saying if it's born digital, it's got to stay digital. So, you know, and realistically, when you think about it, you don't really know what a chat is about until you look at it. So there could be information in any chat that could be about anything that is important to, say, an RTI or, yeah, so it's a bit of a hard one. I just sort of wanted to have an open discussion if anybody had applied it. And it's basically just getting in preparation for the change at Office 365 so that we, with their compliance centre, we have to apply some sort of R&D to chats.
I did a bit of reading about this, and it's definitely not the official approach, because I don't think there is an official approach. But from what I read and what I understand is the Teams chats are more like talking about, like, meeting in the office in the hallway or at the water cooler and saying, oh, what do you think about this project? What are we going to do about it? And then no actual decision making is happening. Then you might go back to your office, sit down, make an email, say, this is the decision that we're going to make. So that's the context, and I that makes sense to me. That's the context, but you're right. There's no like official, like, are these just transitory notes? I don't know. I'm interested in that as well.
Yeah, like, I mean, the intent of use of Teams, of course, it's only gotten stronger and stronger with, you know, COVID and lots of people working from home. But the intent was only ever to be that, you know, talking at the bubbler situation. But there are many chats that have either been an instruction, a directive, a decision in various forms. And it's not just for me or for IT, it's management, you know. So as much as what the intention of a chat was meant to be used for, we as a council probably use it above and beyond that, especially when you're getting down to chats in a channel or chats in a group of people that could be part of a meeting or something. So there's no, and I mean, the retention and disposal schedules have never really been brought up to date with that, as much as they've talked about having the Public Record Act review and all the rest of it. It's still stale, and there's been no real movement on it. So it was sort of like, I'll just leave it as an open discussion. You know, there's no real fine line that says any sort of retention and disposal schedule for it, but the only thing that you could really point the finger at if they were sort of going to go, no, you got to do it like this, is that if it's born digital, it's got to stay digital. So
Jump in, Tina.
I've got a bit of a dopey brain at the moment thinking about how, as I said, I like sort of keeping things simple. But is Teams only there as a digital replacement of, let's sit in a meeting room and someone take handwritten minutes? Isn't it still, it's a digital minute as opposed to written minutes? Is it something that the saved, like we've got this one being recorded for today, is that they're not digital minutes? Could that not be saved as a file in Magic, for example? Is that sort of what we're going with? Is that what we're talking about?
no, I'm talking about an actual chat. So like is similar to Messenger.
Okay, as in the text. The
Yes,
text
so
of something within a
yes,
chat. Yeah.
and we are high-end users of chatting with users because we do have that flexible working arrangement where our users can work from home, and sometimes it's quicker and easier to do that instead of an email or a phone call, because it does the whole bling, and lots of people have it on their phone. I have it on my personal phone so that if I'm not at work, I can still be in touch with people who go, hey, I'm stuck, where's blah, blah, blah. Or
But I
what
mean,
did you
is
do
that
with
then
this?
considered a record?
It's not a record.
If you're having a chat about,
Yeah.
hey, where do I put this in a folder? That's not really a record. But if you're having a discussion or a decision that affects council or cover your ass,
Yeah.
if you had to put something, would you maybe follow it up with an email, and that's then your written correspondence of that agreement, which then goes into Magic? I mean,
Yeah.
chats can only go so far.
Well, we do,
Right,
but there's still plenty of chats that the whole trail of it over a period of time could be about any topic. It's usually just you're talking to a person. What you're talking to them about can vary from day to day. So I have made decisions in a chat where somebody has asked me for some advice or an instruction, and I've provided it. So that, in effect, is a record. But you know, you can't sever the
It
chat.
is.
like the email trail, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah, here's my take on this, Krista. First of all, I think you need to get some a governance policy in place about your use of SharePoint, Office 365, and at the essence of it should be, this is all ephemeral and you can throw it away as soon as you finish with it, unless it's a record. And you know, that's the same for everything else. And my team is using chat a lot more than I do. I'm still a bit old school and like to, my first instinct is to go to email, but you know, it was never an issue. We all went, oh, we're creating so many emails, but we never went, what are we doing? Do we have to make every email a record? Well, no, we didn't have that discussion. Why are we having that discussion with chats now? It's not what it is. You won't find in any disposal schedule chats you keep for 7 years. It's always what it's about. It's the content. And it's the same, you know, what you're saying, Krista, about if you've got something, a trail, and you think it's a topic that's worthy of being a record, make it a record. And Aaron, as you were saying with the chats around the bubbler, you know, if you're having a chat around a bubbler and you felt a decision was made, you're supposed to go and make a record of conversation and turn that into a hard copy piece of, oh, well, electronic today. I am old, aren't I? We used to handwrite a record of conversation on a piece of paper with your pen, and that was your record. The actual voice has gone into the ether and it's gone. So, you know, a telephone conversation was the same. We'd have a record of conversation over a telephone. If we felt it was important, you make it right there and then, and you date and time stamp it to give it as much weight as possible, because you don't have it captured. And I think we can do that with emails too, and with chat. You know, we just say, if this email is important, if there was a decision made there, it's a record. If it's, you know, Aaron asking me for a beer after we knock off work today, that's not a record. You know, we don't need to keep that. It's definitely council property. They own that. but our policies and guidelines should say if it's ephemeral, you can delete it, you can dispose of it without going through a formal process. And that's what all that in New South Wales, they call it normal administrative NAP. Is that what they call it? Normal administrative process? Can't remember. This is like, but that, can you remember, Tina? Did you have from New South Wales? They call it NAP. And if it's just normal administrative
familiar.
process, you could just throw
Dot
it in
I's,
the bin.
cross T's,
Yeah.
put a
yeah.
staple on it. But I
Yeah.
mean, just on that thing you were saying about transporting that decision into a written document, within Magic, I'm honing home on people. Use the comment section. If you've got a service request, if you've got your doc ID, if you've got something there, you've had a conversation with someone, no matter how it was happening, in the car on the way to work, whatever. If it's related to a document or a record, come back and join, add a comment. So-and-so said on whatever date and time, we've agreed to do X, Y, Z and email the customer. You've got a written document attached to or associated to the actual doc ID, and it saves then having to cut, paste, transfer, snippy tool or whatever. So-and-so said blah, blah, and add it as a comment.
Add so much value to our information if we do that.
Yeah, and I'm getting a lot of people at front counter, so-and-so rang back or said something. Use the comments. The function's there. It takes 3 seconds to bring up your doc ID and write it. Everyone can add it and you can visually see it and it's not going to get lost.
And service requests are a really good example of what we're doing here with ephemeral or how we classify records. So many people say to me, well, what's the retention period for a service request? I go, it doesn't, there isn't one. It's what the service request is about. So they think there should be a spot in the BCS for service requests. Well, if we get a service request about a footpath, it's going in roads under minor maintenance. If we get something about rubbish in the parks, it's under parks and reserves. And we put it under what's the activity that we're doing. So I know a lot of people don't do that. They have their separate service request library and they all sit there grouped under the service request type or name. But that's what we should be doing with them eventually, is getting them into our BCS so we can go, this one was important, that one wasn't, and get rid of them as quick as we can. So it's the same with the chats. The chat should be managed exactly the same way. So it's not really new. It's just, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah, but the thing with chats is that not everybody uses it for what it was intended for, and I completely agree that it should be ephemeral, but decisions are being made in chat because it's, as much as you say it should be in an email, majority of our users just see it as a different medium. It doesn't matter that it's chat, doesn't matter that it's an email. It's an electronic medium and they're using it that way. So, and you can't sever the trail of a chat when the topic changes. And to know where a decision was made in a chat, you got to read the whole damn thing, because one day's one topic and next day's another topic. It is the intent was, like I first discussed, to be just, hey, how you going, or hey, where's that piece of paper or whatever. But it has turned into a bit of a, instead of an email to decide what it should be done, they've put it in a chat. And especially when there's channels that might be about a particular project. So we might create a channel for a bunch of people from random areas within council, and they're working on that one project and they use that. They might use it for, calendar appointments are different because it's linked to Outlook, but they'll put their whiteboard in there. They'll put their chats in there, and it's a medium now. It's not just what it should have been intended for.
I wonder if it is just like a training issue and a policy where you've got to bring it in and say, look, like, this is what you use this tool for, and if you make a decision, it's got to be like recorded in an official, like an email or something. And then my second thought was something that I can't remember, but yeah, I just thought I don't know how to deal with it. And my second thought was if it's unknown, you have to put a retention on it for the maximum what it could be. And so now all of a sudden you're like, what if they're making human resources decisions? Now you've got to keep that chat for 80 years. That's a long time to keep the thread forever,
But you
Absolutely.
know,
And my feedback straight up was it's a training thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
You
it
know,
could
use
could
this
be
medium for this, and if it's an officiated thing, do an email.
and email has the same problem, doesn't it? How many times do you receive an email and the subject is the original subject of the email, but the person's asking you a question that's got that? It's just easier than going new email to and put my name in. They just find the email that I last sent them and go reply.
Or if I'm replying and I'm bringing up something else, I'll change the subject line.
Well, yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's better than most people do, and it's
The
amazing
first thing, change the subject line.
how many records we've been given to classify for someone, and I tell my staff, you classify on the latest thing because that's what they sent it to you. But there can be really confidential, sensitive information in that email trail. It can make it really, really awkward and complicated for a record keeper. Were we any help, Krista?
Oh yeah, to me it was like it's a training issue. We
Yeah.
need to go back to the drawing board and really reiterate what the tool's meant to be used for. And you know, if it's a decision-making thing, use Outlook.
Yeah.
Yep. My second thing was, does anybody have a digitalization policy? I don't. We've been wanting one. Where someone please help.
So what could you describe what you mean by a digitization policy?
Well, we want to get a digital policy so that when something has a physical record has been scanned and sorry, no. It's where a record is created from something that's not in our EDRMS. So say it's like a receipt from authority. Someone's come in and paid something, it's produced a receipt. And that is classified as a digital record, and we can apply an R&D for it for whatever is appropriate to that activity. Or, you know, the engineers going out on site using Reflect on their iPad, they've taken a whole heap of photos, or they've scanned something as part of the report that they're taking photos about, and they can get rid of that scan that they've done. So it's a digitalization policy. It's not that if it's created digital, it's kept digital. And I think also as part of it, Christy from Gimpy, I think it might have been, that lady that gave a presentation at our last conference that I won something, lucky door prize, never used. She talked about the digitalization policy as well of when things are scanned, I think.
Yeah, Christy would have. That's what we have. So we have a list of documents that we went through with all our departments, and anything they identified that once we've scanned it, we upload it into Magic, we hold it for a month for QA, and then we can dispose of the hard copies because the electronics are now the master records.
That's what I'm after.
Yep, so that's what we do at Gimpy.
And it could be things like, John, say IT want a user to sign a probity form. Things like that. Like I had him come around the other day and go, oh, do you need these? I said, yes, it's a physical record. I'm going to put it in the day box and blah, 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 and profile it for you. And he's like, oh, well, I've already scanned it to myself. And can't I just chuck it? And he's put it in the bin. I'm like, no, Gary, you've got to QA it and whatever. Anyway, he comes back 5 minutes later and goes, oh, I missed a page.
Right, yeah.
Imagine if he shredded it.
Yeah. So it is your early source record destruction process.
Yeah.
So, and have you read all the stuff on QSA's website about that?
No, John, I rely on you to tell us that. It's called summarizing.
So that sounds, QSA already have guidelines for that. So I'd assume if you had an official policy, it would almost be word for word at the QSA. But the problem, like I would love to implement it, but the problem for me is that you have to QA a certain percentage of documents to make sure that everything's uploaded to a certain standard, so it's readable and you haven't missed stuff. So you have to have a process, and that might be like checking 20% of documents that have been scanned. But like for me or Tina, like the only records person, and I'm doing IT as well, that's just impossible. I couldn't go through and check, do a physical check to make sure it was all done. So in that respect, I'm sort of stuck with a paper process.
We've got a really comprehensive one. And we started developing it when we work with Gimpy on theirs. And we've actually developed some software utilities to make that whole job a lot easier now that integrate with Magic Documents. The QA thing, our approach to it is, I think you should have a quality assurance process anyway, even if you're not doing early source record destruction. Ours, for our clients, it starts at that point when they do scan it. They're supposed to check it there. We actually have a second point because the second person actually registers it into the system. So we have a second check. So we can actually say we check every document that's scanned twice. And if they fail, they get sent to a workflow to go back to the scanner to say, hey, we think that this is wrong. We think there's a page missing. They might come back and say, yeah, that page is missing, so it wasn't wrong. But so we cover it that way. We also we have a QA period for 6 months. So most documents, their use has really died off by the time that 6 months is off. But what we're really saying there is it's been used within that 6 months. So surely the person who's using it would have said there's something wrong with this document. So we're really happy with our approach to QA that we're covering off on it. We also do an audit every 3 months. So we run a report that pulls us out 100 random documents that have been registered in a time frame. So we do it in the last 3 months, give us 100 records, and we go and check the QA on the quality of them and see if they failed, were they put into the QA workflow. So we really cover off on that really well. But yeah, if you get on the QSA website, they'll tell you all about what you have to have as far as the rules are of what you can do. It's in the GRDS, Krista. It's 2074 is your disposal authority for destroying records early, and it gives a nice summary of what you're supposed to have in place there. And you do have to have a defensible process. And I think it has to be signed off by your CEO or someone to say, yep. And QSA don't even want to see it. They just want to know that you have one, so that if it ever goes to court, you can say, no, we have a process, and it's a defensible process. Defensible means it makes sense. It's logical. We're not just shooting from the hip. We've thought this through. So if you can do that, you can make it happen. And our software, we scan things into a box. We have a utility called Scan to Box, and we put barcodes on all our documents. We scan them in, and the software tells the scanner whether to put it into a box for early source record destruction or for a box for long-term storage. So the system does all that thinking that the staff don't have to think about. Is this one we can get rid of or not? So that the records people are setting it up and saying those ones can go, those ones have to stay. So it can be done.
Beautiful. And then the last thing was about flagging records that are subject to an RTI request. Because those RTI requests can include many and varied multiple documents of different elements from different departments, from different activities about this one issue. And a document may have almost reached its R&D, but now you've got to hold on to it longer because it was subject to an RTI.
Oh, okay. So have you got, you're just talking about the and you've got, sorry, on the agenda, I just got it in the way here.
It says flagging of records subject to RTI requests
regarding
R&D schedule.
So it's you mean that records disposal authority? Because
yes.
I think because there is one in there, isn't there, for how long you keep copies of records that have been provided for an RTI. That's not what you're talking about.
Yes, that is what I'm talking about. So in the R&D, it says to apply a sentence, the minimum time the record must be kept, blah, blah, blah. It lists them. And the last one says that are subject to a request for access under RTI, the Privacy Act, or any other relevant act. So I read that saying that if you go and get a whole heap of different documents and they're all in part of one RTI request that's been provided, there's now an R&D for each of those documents applied from the moment the RTI request has been done. So it could extend them.
Do you know the authority number?
No, I copied and pasted it into the email I sent you.
Oh, the authority number, did you?
No, the text.
Oh yeah, yeah. I just wanted to read it out of the GRDS.
I'll see if I can find it while you're talking.
Okay. Oops. Yeah, that'd be great. So yeah, because I just want to get my head clear on this. So if you make copies of a record to give to someone as part of their RTI request, which kind of makes sense because you've got to group them all together, put them in a zip file or something and give them to them. There is a retention period, I think, for how long you keep those for. But if you can give me that GRDS, or I can look it up myself if we're having trouble. So that should be fairly simple. So I would put that in a different part of my BCS, Krista, and put that R&D on it. And from the time that RTI is finished, keep it for that retention period. As far as the other records go, the original records, they should still go by their disposal authority. But if there is an RTI request in, then there should be a freeze put on those so that they don't accidentally get disposed of before that RTI is finished.
Yeah, that's what I was
That's what you
trying
do?
to get at. Well, we don't have any R&D, we keep everything, but that's a work in progress.
Right.
It was more for the way that it reads, it's like it's saying you've also got to apply that R&D to the source document.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find it now.
Oh. So it's information management access, isn't it? Where's that?
So I just went to the Queensland Government R&D site, and where it says find out how long to keep record sentence records, you scroll down and it says about applying a sentence, and it talks about, you know, you've got to have a process and all that sort of thing. But then it says there's these types of things that you have a different R&D to apply for you. I'm happy to share my screen if you like.
Sure. Where are you? Hang on. Oh no, yeah, you should be able to do it. It's coming. Great.
Okay, so in here on find out how long to keep a record, scroll all the way down here. This is where it talks about applying a sentence, and it talks about subject to RTI.
Oh. Where I've lost you.
Can you see that I've highlighted?
Yep. So hang on. Yeah, sensing.
That means
People.
it's in place.
Yeah. So if they're subject to a request for access, then you can't. Then you have to put a freeze on them. So you have to keep longer. So it's the same as any, even if there's legal action. So if there's a legal some what's the word I'm looking for? Court stuff. That'll do. That'll do. If that's happening, you even things are due to go, you can't get rid of them. So
No, I
if
know,
business-
I know that, but what
So-
I'm trying
so-
to say
yeah.
is if how do you guys go about flagging a document that has been provided to an RTI request to then know, okay, I've got to apply a longer R&D to this one because it was provided as part of an RTI request? Like, is there a flagging mechanism you use for that?
I would put it on the whole subject.
Yep.
And I would just put a freeze on it. You know how to do that in Magic?
Well, like I say, we don't have any R&D. We keep everything at the moment. It's just something we haven't got to.
Yeah,
But
just yeah.
it is where it's a cog that's turning. And for me, it was like, okay, so for any document that may have been provided for an RTI, we would have to flag it in. Well, first we've got to identify it for a start and flag it, because I don't do the RTIs. We have a governance officer that does the RTI. So it's just that extra process of what you do with the source as well.
Yeah.
So my question was like, how do you guys do it?
Yeah. So I didn't realize. I'm just having a look here. I just didn't realize this little thing I was going to go. Just can't do this, but you can't. Right. Okay,
I
so
suppose
you're
we're
right.
lucky enough here at Belong we haven't had any of those, but I've just had a quick look. I would have presumed when you go into the properties of the document, scroll down to retention and disposal, there's a
It
section
is,
there where
yeah.
you can set your R&D, audit log, freeze, that sort of jazz. But
Do you
I
mind
just
if I-
can't find where it is.
Do you mind if I share my screen, Krista?
No, not at all. I'm fine.
So,
Because
Where am I?
we get what happens is when an RTI comes in, because it could involve multiple areas, and depending on what it's all about, there'll be a number of officers involved, users involved. So we really want to get a process down pat that we know we've got the R&D functionality there and how to apply it and all the rest of it. Not that we do at the moment, but for those documents that they provide, we have to rely then on the users to go and do that. Otherwise, the RTI officer will be here for days. Nat, well, how long was your last one? 72 hours or something?
Yeah, I'm just going
Just compiling, just
Is that better?
redacting the documents.
Yeah, but the way I do RTI is that I find the records that I'm looking for. Sorry, am I still sharing my screen?
Nope.
Oh, sorry. I just changed monitors so that it would appear better on your computers. Sorry about that. Okay, where is it? Okay. So when I find, so you get someone doing an RTI, we give them access to everything, and we do that. Let's see if I've got it here. We have a group called Discovery. So, and there's no one in that group until someone needs to do some discovery work, like a legal reason or for an RTI. Then we add them to the discovery group. They get access to everything in the BCS. Then we would flag the records. This is our sample local government BCS, and we don't really have any records in here. Might have some, if I go down to finance, might have some pretend ones in here. Yeah, so we put our records here. So I would go, to edit, add to queue. I might even go to that whole folder, edit. Where's my add to queue? Add to queue. I go to my queue. Where's my queue? There it is. Okay, and these are all the records that I've gathered for my RTI request, and then I can zip them up and give them to them. And then I would go to either the individual records, or to the folder. And we've got, but you do have to have R&D applied. So we go and say, this is accounting records, it's GRDS 1099. We keep them for 7 years from the cutoff. But I can put a freeze on here. I would tick that, and I would put in some text here, sorry. Text here.
That pop-up screen isn't appearing on our shared screen,
thanks,
by the way.
hang on. Yeah, I appreciate
but
that.
Your mouse looks great.
My mouse is
I was
doing
wondering
a
what you were
great
talking
job.
about then. I can't see nothing.
I was trying to be clever. Let me share my whole screen and that'll work better. Screen. Sorry about that. Yeah, so sorry. So yeah, we did get to that part, didn't we? I said, I added these to my queue, you saw that. And then I went to my queue, you saw that, but it was this part here. I won't go to the properties. I come down, I say this is GRDS 1099, which for accounting records keep for 7 years, but they're subject to a RTI request. So I'm going to update the freeze flag. I just tick it. As soon as that's ticked, it cannot be disposed of, and I'll put RTI request 2 or something in it and go okay. And then I can run a report and I can say, hey, show me everything. This RTI request is over now. Please run a report and show me everything that used to have to do with that RTI request and take the freeze off. So that's how I manage it anyway, Krista. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't know if we'd put it on a folder level. Maybe if it was a planning application, because they are
sure,
specific to a planning application.
But you can do it. You can do it on a document level too. So you can come down and just go, yeah, let's put the freeze on here.
Yeah, it was more of if
Yeah.
you guys out there had a process that you do for those types of documents at the moment for when it is an RTI or something for OIC or Privacy Act or whatever. Because I did notice that the other day and I was like, oh, I didn't see that before. Well, not that much of a records geek, but the CDO was kicking in.
Would it be enough if you had to download all these documents and deliver them as a file as part of the OTI, to then, I assume that an OTI has got its own retention period. So then you just re-upload that under the RTI retention period, and those original source files can be disposed of as per normal.
Well,
Yeah,
that's not
yeah.
that's the thing though. But
I'm
the legislation is saying.
Spitballing, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, that's fine.
no,
But
you're
to
absolutely
me,
right.
the legislation is saying, the way I read it, that screen that I was showing before, that those source documents, if they have been subject to an RTI, you need to the RTI must be kept longer. That's how it reads to me.
Yes, they do, but not only until the RTI has been completed.
Doesn't say that. It just says if it's been subject to the request for an access under the RTI.
Does it say if
So-
it has been or if it is subject?
It says the retention period listed in the relevant retention and disposal schedules is the minimum time the records are to be kept. Records must be kept longer if the business needs them for the business needs for them has not ceased. They are covered by a disposal freeze. They are required for legal action. They are subject to a request for access under the RTI, Information Privacy Act, or other relevant act. So
Yeah,
to
so
me, that's reading the source document needs to be kept longer if it's subject to an RTI request.
If it is current, to me that reads if it is currently subject. If that RTI request has been finalised, it's no longer subject to the RTI request, and you can just put it through your normal R&D processes.
Yeah, I didn't read it that way. But anyway, I just sort of thought I'd bring it up, see what everybody's feedback was of how you interpret it, how you process it at the moment. I can do the R&D on the individual documents, which is what it would have to be because it's only some that are in a folder, not all. Yeah, it's painful.
And Aaron, what you were saying too about putting them, I put them on the application. Oops, have I lost everyone? No, I put them on the application, and you got to keep the application for 7 years. So I put the copies of the records we supplied on the application, and then once the 7 years is up, get rid of it all.
That's
Yeah,
how
yeah, that was
it makes
it
sense
for
to
me.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was the last thing on our agenda, and we have another team waiting outside our door to jump in here at 3:30 as well. But if you guys need to continue on.
No, we can. I'm happy to say goodbye to everyone. If anyone wants to hang on, Gimpy can go and we can talk further, but I'm happy to wrap it up.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys.
See ya.
You guys happy? Did you want to continue on anything, or are you happy to say farewell?
Happy to say farewell.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that was a great meeting. Gee, we covered a lot of stuff in that and some really meaty stuff too. So,
Hey,
yeah.
John, just something occurred to me, like after we were talking about that 365, like the AI stuff. As a photographer, there's all these new programs that are really cool, and you take a photo and you press a button and they make them like absolutely magical, like landscapes, and they replace skies and they change people's faces, and it's incredible what they can do. But you still have to have, like, to get a good picture, you still need that manual process to be there to look at it and be like, oh, like that sky doesn't work, that's too much, sort of thing. And I think that's a really good thing with the AI or the records, is it's a really good tool. You still need that manual process of like the training, and you need to make sure it's working, and the keywords and like all that sort of stuff. So
you do.
Yeah.
I'm actually at the RIMPA conference in November, going to be presenting on AI, because I know that we do a fair bit of AI in our product development. and our product's getting very, very close. We're very excited about it. It's going to change the world. It's integrating to Magic Documents, but we're writing it so that it'll integrate to any EDRMS. And I think it's going to change the way people do things. And what you're saying is really, really true. There's a lot. The reason I'm doing this presentation, it's not a vendor presentation, is that there's a lot of terminology out there that's very misleading. So I just want to sort of clear some of the mythology away around AI. But what you're saying is really true. With Record Point, we went to one of their presentations, and their AI for classification is all it's assisted classification. It's not auto classification. So everything that their AI says that this is where I think it goes, a human has to actually press the
check up on it.
Yeah. So it's
and like the way the companies market it is like you don't have to do anything ever again, and
yes,
it just does everything, and
yep.
it's just not true, you know.
It's not true. It's not true. Yeah. But if you guys don't get to come along and see my live presentation, I'll try and get it recorded and maybe put it online, because the software that we're doing, we're taking a slightly different. We've actually got real AI, not just rules-based AI, which the other organisation companies are doing. And ours, you can set thresholds, so you can say for this record class, if the AI gets it right 92% of the time, let it do it. You know, we've done the risk analysis, so just let the AI do it. But if it doesn't meet those thresholds, then the AI's got to ask for a person to confirm whether it's right or not. So yeah, it's a really interesting area, and we are a long way away from, you know, robots being able to do our job. I think it's still very much a human job what we do.
Yeah, cool. Anyway, I'm glad that I made this meeting. Yeah. Every other meeting has been on a holiday or something that I've not
it's been a little while.
So
yeah.
Cool.
You have to come down to Harvey Bay, Aaron. We'll catch up in person.
Yeah.
It sounds pretty interesting about that Queensland seminar. It'd be good to know a little bit more. I don't know if Balonshire's with RIMPA, so I haven't seen it. So it sounds really interesting.
What I might do is I might just send an email out to everyone in the group and just say, out of this discussion, I'm sending this out just in case anyone's interested to come, and I'll just put the link into the conference. So, and if we decide to get there a little bit earlier and catch up and have a chat over lunch, that'd be absolutely awesome, I think, too. Yeah. You still online, Krista?
Right, yeah.
You'll be coming for sure.
Nope.
No, she's gone. Okay, it's just the four of us. So thanks everyone for your input. And Gimpy will send out an invite. They'll let us know when we're doing the next one. Good one. See you all.
Guys.
Thank you.